Slavery, a dark chapter in human history that spanned centuries and affected millions of lives. While it's a painful past, it's essential to understand this history and how abolition movements rose to challenge it. Join us as we explore the origins of slavery, its impact, and the brave fight for freedom and equality. Slavery has existed since the earliest civilizations, including ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome, where prisoners of war, debtors, and even people born into slavery were forced to labor without freedom. But the practice evolved dramatically in the 15th century with the advent of the transatlantic slave trade. Beginning in the 1400s, European powers like Portugal, Spain, Britain, and France began trafficking enslaved people from Africa to the Americas. Over the next 400 years, an estimated 12 million African men, women, and children were forcibly transported across the Atlantic in horrific conditions. Many didn't survive the brutal journey, known as the Middle Passage, and those who did faced lives of grueling labor and unimaginable hardship. In the Americas, enslaved Africans were forced to work on plantations, producing valuable commodities like sugar, cotton, and tobacco that drove the economies of Europe and the colonies. Families were often separated, and enslaved people were subjected to violent punishment, their rights and humanity stripped away. But even in the face of such oppression, acts of resistance were common. Enslaved people fought back through rebellion, escape, and cultural preservation. As slavery spread, so did opposition. By the 18th century, voices rose against it, and abolitionist movements began to form in both Europe and the United States. Figures like Olaudah Equiano, an African who wrote about his experiences in slavery, and British abolitionist William Wilberforce were instrumental in raising awareness. Abolitionists argued that slavery was morally wrong and campaigned tirelessly to end it. In the United States, abolitionists like Harriet Tubman risked their lives on the Underground Railroad, helping enslaved people escape to freedom. Formerly enslaved people like Frederick Douglass spoke out powerfully, exposing the brutality of slavery and calling for immediate emancipation. After decades of struggle, abolitionist movements began to see victories. Britain outlawed slavery in most of its colonies in 1833, a landmark achievement in the fight for human rights. In the United States, the Civil War ultimately led to President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, freeing enslaved people in the Confederacy. The passage of the 13th Amendment in 1865 finally abolished slavery throughout the United States. The end of slavery was a monumental victory, but the legacy of oppression left deep scars. Formerly enslaved people faced new challenges, including discrimination, poverty, and the rise of Jim Crow laws in the U.S. However, the abolition of slavery was a critical step toward civil rights, inspiring future generations to continue the fight for equality and justice. While slavery was legally abolished, forms of exploitation and trafficking still exist. Modern-day abolitionists work tirelessly to combat these injustices and protect human rights, reminding us that the fight for freedom is ongoing. Organizations worldwide continue to combat human trafficking and forced labor, ensuring the legacy of abolition lives on. The history of slavery and abolition is a story of immense suffering, but also of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. By remembering this history, we honor those who fought for freedom and remind ourselves that the pursuit of justice is a responsibility we all share.